Hello. Hey, I want to do something a little different in this post, and it's some of you are going to think I'm weird or I'm a doomer. I think they're called. I don't intend to be, but I want to just give as a I'm not going to make a blanket statement and say here are how Christians ought to reflect on the incoming wave and power of artificial intelligence. I mean it. But I want to just reflect on me as a Christian. Here is how I'm thinking about these things, and I I listen to a lot of interviews, and I've been trying to talk about it with friends for a while now. I find it rather interesting and quite frankly quite alarming in the sense of the lack of national valid discussion that anyone's having about this. It seems that the makers of said AI and those close to all of it are trying to raise some flags, and it's not really public discussion. And to speak on it, you sound like an idiot to those who otherwise aren't informed or really interested in this. Um, I'm not going to try to summarize at all what's going on with artificial intelligence, but I want to rather speak to those who are informed and are also listening, perhaps due to AI. You might already have the same little rabbit trail Google or YouTube algorithm that I do, and so therefore we're listening to the same people. But I want to just give four reflections as a Christian, as someone informed and trusting of the Bible, and how through the lens of my faith I'm seeing what's happening, and maybe even in these categories, how I think as Christians we're going to be called on, or what's going to be asked of us, what is strength? What does the strength of our faith look like in the coming years? It's interesting to think. One way I thought about doing this video was, if I were to be an evangelist in 5 years, how would I be evangelizing our society? Because I do think it's going to be radically different. The culture around us is soon to look completely different. And by soon, I mean in the next year to 5 years. It's going to be completely different. And you can go research why that's going to be the case. But anyway, I want to just give four reflections for those of you who are also informed and reading about this stuff. First, the first image that's come to my mind is the image of the Egyptians, or I'm sorry, the Israelites after fleeing slavery of the Egyptians. They find themselves in the wilderness, and they are longing to go back to slavery because at least the Egyptians gave them something good to eat. So this is the bickering of the Israelites in the wilderness. And so God gives them both manna from heaven, but also as a way of saying, okay, you want what you ask for, okay. And he gives them quail from heaven, like quail to start dropping dead in the wilderness, and they eat so much quail. Exodus says that it starts coming out of their nostrils, like it's a way of depicting. They have gorged. Is that the right word? They've gorged themselves. They've stuffed themselves silly to where they're sick. They demand something. They want it. And so now they're ridiculously inflammatory because of it. You later, this takes the shape in the verbiage of idolatry. Moses comes down from Mount Sinai. He finds that they are worshiping the gods of Egypt. They've created the golden calf, and so God, in His sovereign plan of redemption, He now creates a sacrificial system where they're going to take the gods of Egypt, which were goats, sheep, and bulls or ox calves, And he's going to now make them, in this great act of renouncing these gods, he's going to make them slaughter them. And so this is his way of getting the Egyptian out of their heart, right? And out of their mind. They're going to tangibly take it and kill it. This does not have control over me. When I think of the idols of our society, idols of comfort, and these are going to be things I'm going to be reflecting on more in the next couple of minutes. But these idols of comfort and power and ease and wealth and fame and beauty, and most importantly, immortality. God's, in a sense, I can envision God saying, "Okay, you want that? I'm going to give it to you." Quail out of the nostril type way. Are you sure you want that? Okay, go ahead. And so, in one way of understanding part of the apocalyptic type nature of where AI is heading is there's going to be this serious power dynamic where those in charge of making and running the AI are going to then begin selling the AI, and every company and the leaders of every company wanting the incentive of 24-hour workers, and these workers have no costs to them. They're never going to be sick. They're never going to have marital fights that's going to make their production worse for a day or week. They're never going to travel. They're going to work every hour on the clock. Yes, I would rather have that worker than a human worker. And so the necessity of the gods of production, efficiency, more wealth, gaining more, progressing, growing, expanding power, all these things, God's going to say, okay, he's currently saying, you want those things? Okay, I'm going to give those things to you. Let's see how that looks. And so that's the first thing. And I think as Christians, then we have this, and I would say this urgent call to identify and to renounce the gods of our society, to not live by them, to not be controlled by them, but to live the way of Christ, to live the way of God, and that ought to always be a countercultural way, to identify what's controlling the world, and to say, I'm not going to live by that. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, the second thing is I think we're realizing that some of the great terror and what's causing all of this is that these people in charge, though they would say that there is a very high percentage that this goes sideways, there's also a great percentage, there's a high percentage in their mind that this could be really, really good. And I'm going to reflect on why their desire of utopia actually is not utopia at all. But they're pursuing this, they say, because it has potential for really good things. But they also recognize there's a great potential for serious harm, the loss of millions of jobs, and more particularly having the possession of something that's going to be extremely powerful. And so there's a great rat race for the first company in America or the first company in the world to achieve the creation of what's called AGI. I think it's called AGI, gosh, off the top of my head. Because they fear other people would beat them to it. But what we're realizing is no one trusts anyone to do that, because everyone's chasing after the same thing, which is not to be a savior, but it's the same thing that Pharaoh was. All of these leaders of the AI industries want to be the Pharaoh. They want the fame, they want the wealth, they want the power, they want the honor. They want to be the person who created the thing that potentially destroys society. there's such power in that, and no one trusts the other person to do it first. And so what I see is a tremendous call toward Christian virtue, um, that as the world is pursuing the momentary, temporary, evaporating vanity of honor, fame, wealth, power, beauty, that we are pursuing what is good. Precisely faith, hope, and love, but also temperance and prudence and courage and humility, and these things which um, captivate the heart of the Christian. That we are, as the world is distrusting everyone left and right, we are to be a people of virtue. All right, third, um, this is, I think, the most interesting and something I want to reflect more on. But if I were to speak about what evangelism is going to look like in 5 to 10 years, it would have to evolve around the necessity of suffering, the goodness in suffering. Because the utopia that these people are envisioning is essentially that AI can become so intelligent that it's going to, in a snap of a finger, cure disease. And even more so, they say, it will cure the greatest disease, which is the mortality of the human person, so that we can live forever. So this is a very spiritual thing that's happening, and at the same time, just as you can't have the goodness of the grape on the vine for the glass of wine that's enjoyed, at the cost of that wine, there is the consequence of the reality of alcoholism and the demise of the family because of it, and et cetera, et cetera. That all good things also have a vice. All things are exploited. So, in the same sense, at the cost of curing cancer and defeating all of these terrible things, there will also be the loss of all inconveniences, the small things of and by which we suffer. And what I mean by that is, oh, I don't have to clean my house anymore. I'll have a robot do it. Oh, I don't have to till the garden anymore. I'll have a robot do that. Oh, I don't have to even think anymore or write a paper anymore for college, or do this anymore, wash the dishes anymore. Oh, how great will that be? I will never have to be uncomfortable. I'll never have to cook dinner anymore. I'll never have to talk to my parents anymore. I'll never have to be alone anymore. I can have a robot be my friend. I'll never have to deal with a spouse. I can have a robot be my spouse. And you think I'm being facetious. I'm not. Like, this is legitimate. This is already happening. So you get rid of all of the suffering. At one end, there's things which seem to be really good, the loss of cancer and overcoming these tremendous diseases which have inflicted people near and dear to you, and potentially you and I one day. At the same time, you can't have that without also having the reality of the loss of all sufferings. And then we will be to a point where we will no longer know what in the world it means to be a human person. And we are going to have to come face to face with the fact that human suffering is part of being human. And particularly, we're going to have to come to the fact that our mortality is the first grace of God, that God did not want us to live in the world in the condition by which we find ourselves in, that it is a grace, that he limits our livelihood. That I mean, could you imagine, do you want to live to 800 or to 8,000? Like, does that sound exciting or miserable? Because as a Christian, I desire more than anything to be with God, who is eternal, and to live in his life, which is eternal life. I don't want to live to 700 years old, right? That is not utopia. I don't want a world where it's void of all suffering. That is what it tangibly means to be a human. And that's how I connect with God. That's the very thing by which I offer. I think part of the reason that the spiritual the spirituality of America has been so terrible is because we've tried to create God without pain. We've tried to create utopia in our own lives. We've tried to live a life of complete pleasure and comfort, and all the pain by which we experience, whether it's relational or physical or soul level pain, we just distract ourselves and we tune into a show, or we drink more coffee, or we drink more or alcohol, or we go on a new trip because we don't want to think about things that are real. It's T.S. Eliot said, humanity can't handle too much reality. And so we are going to be in this situation where Christians are going to be called on to speak to the necessity and the goodness of suffering, that a father disciplines a child, and that suffering unites us to the cross, and that it's not, we cannot experience the resurrection life except through death. Like that we worship a God who suffered. We worship a God who died. As we are being made into his image and likeness, that is part of what it means to be a human, okay? Being redeemed, or being redeemed through death and through suffering. All right, lastly, this is more of perhaps you might think of as a silly prophetic word, but I think we're going to soon, within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be asked to bow down to something that we do not belong to. And that some of this is already happening. And so I think we're going to understand the persecution of Christians around the world today, and we're going to understand the persecution of Christians throughout the history of our faith in a tangible way. I think of the VeggieTales scene of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego bowing down to the chocolate bunny. But like all of the Israelites, were being asked to bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar, and they refused. We are going to get to a point where, whether it's your company, and you're going to be asked by shareholders to get rid of the human personnel at your company so that your staff, or so that your board of directors or whoever, they can make more profit. You're going to ask to lay off 2,000 employees and hire in AI. You're going to be asked to do that, and you're going to have a very Christian decision to make. And that's just one of 100 scenarios where we're going to be asked to bow down to something that we don't belong to. And so I think this is a moment in time where two things are happening. People are leaving out the back door of the church because they're being captivated by it's never really, their faith in Jesus Christ has never really meant anything to them. And so they've been living in the world and of the world. They've been living like the Egyptians, though they're Israelites. And so they leave. The wave, the invitation's too strong, the pull's too strong, their flesh is too weak. But at the same time, many young people who have been brought up into this type of environment perhaps see the facade, they see the emptiness of it, and they don't want anything to do with it. And so you see them in droves coming into the church, looking for what is more true. And so I believe that we're going to be asked to be a great witness of not bowing down to the gods and serving one God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. All right, those are my reflections. Go inform yourself about some of this stuff. In the comments, if you're interested, ask for what I've been listening to. I'll be happy to provide you videos I've watched. All right, thanks.